My father-in-law handed me a bottle of Molson at the kitchen table and told me my wife had been sleeping with my best friend for 8 months. Then he told me I should probably keep it quiet for the sake of the family. I'm a wildland firefighter. I spend summers in BC and Alberta reading terrain, wind, shifts, weather patterns. Watching for the exact combination of conditions that turns a manageable situation into something that kills people. You learn to recognize when a fire is about to blow up before it actually does. You look for the signs, the dry grass, the wind picking up from the wrong direction, the smoke bending low. I missed every sign. My father-in-law Hank called me on a Thursday in late October. Said he and my mother-in-law, Bev, wanted to have us over for dinner Saturday. Family thing, he just come. My wife, Simone, had been distant for a few weeks. Distracted. Said it was stress at work. She manages procurement for a mid-size construction firm in Calgary, and Q4 was always brutal. I believed her. We'd been together 9 years, married for 4. Distracted happened sometimes. Saturday came cold. Snow flurries off the Rockies, the kind that make Calgary feel smaller than it is. I drove. Simone sat in the passenger seat scrolling her phone the whole way. Our daughter, Piper, was in the back in her booster seat, holding her stuffed moose, telling me something about a volcano she'd learned about at school. She's 5. Everything is a volcano, or a dinosaur, or a very serious matter involving her stuffed animals. I told her volcanoes were basically just mountains that got fed up. She thought about that for a second, then said, like when you get mad at the traffic? Sure, kiddo. Just like that. Hank and Bev's house is in Tuscany, the northwest neighborhood. The one with the ridge views and the big lots. They'd lived there since before Simone and I started dating. I know every corner of that house. I proposed to Simone in their backyard. I helped Hank redo the back deck the summer before Piper was born. My best friend's truck was already in the driveway when we pulled up. His name is Brett. We went to high school together in Red Deer, played junior hockey, drove each other to rinks at 5 a.m. for 15 years. He was a groomsman at our wedding. He's Piper's godfather. When Simone and I bought our house in Bridgeland, Brett helped us move in a January cold snap without a single complaint. He is, in every definition of the word, my best friend. I didn't think anything of his truck being there. Brett had dinner with Hank and Bev sometimes when I was away on fire season. They liked him. Everyone liked Brett. Inside the house smelled like pot roast. Piper ran straight to the living room where Bev keeps a basket of toys for her. Hank's model train set was running around the tracks, on the shelf. Piper loved that thing. I could hear it chugging from the entryway. Brett was at the kitchen table. He didn't get up when I came in. That's the thing I keep coming back to. He's the kind of guy who stands up, shakes hands, pats your back, asks about your season. He stayed in his chair and looked somewhere between my shoulder and the wall behind me. Hank put a Molson in my hand without asking. Bev was at the stove, back turned, stirring something that didn't need stirring. Simone had gone quiet behind me. I turned around to see where she'd gone and she was still in the entryway, standing there, not moving. Come sit down, son, Hank said. The dining room table had 6 chairs. I sat in the one I always sat in, the one with the view into the backyard, where I'd gotten down on one knee 9 years ago. The deck I'd helped build was frosted over outside the window Hank sat. Simone finally came and sat across from me. Brett stayed in the kitchen, out of my sightline. Hank is not a soft man. He worked in pipeline welding for 3 decades. He doesn't warm up to things slowly. He put both hands flat on the table and said, something's happened and you need to know about it.
And I'm telling you
now because I found out, and this family doesn't operate with secrets. He told me. I don't remember the exact words. Some version of, Simone and Brett, going back to February. He'd found out 2 weeks ago when Bev accidentally saw something on Simone's phone. He'd confronted Brett privately first. Then Simone. Now he was telling me. The Molson was cold in my hand. I hadn't opened it. From the living room, I could hear the train set going around its little track. Piper narrating something to herself, the moose apparently a passenger. The moose apparently had opinions about the route. I put the bottle down on the table very carefully. The way you set something down when you don't trust your hands.
Hank kept
talking. Something about how these things happen. Something about how Simone was sorry, how Brett was sorry, how they both knew it was wrong and it was over, how the family needed to stay together, how Piper needed stability, how he hoped I could find a way to he used the phrase absorb this. For the sake of everyone involved. I looked at Simone. She was crying. Not the way people cry when they're broken, the way people cry when they're hoping crying does something useful. How long did you know? I asked her. She didn't answer that shit. I'm so sorry. I don't know why it happened. It wasn't. How long did you know? I said again. Same volume. Same nothing in my voice. Since February, she said quietly. 8 months. I'd spent a significant part of that 8 months in remote fire camps across 3 provinces. Came home exhausted and dirty and grateful to walk through my own front door. She'd been there warm, making dinner, asking how my season was. Kissed me hello. 8 months. Brett appeared in the doorway from the kitchen. He finally made himself visible. He said my name. I didn't look at him. I kept looking at Simone. Bev came out from the kitchen. She put her hand on my shoulder. She said, "We love you, you are family to us, that doesn't change." I thought about what she meant by family. What kind of family? The kind that absorbs things apparently. Dad, Piper's voice came from the living room. "The train stopped. Can you fix it?" I pushed my chair back. Bev stepped aside. I walked into the living room and crouched down next to my daughter. She looked up at me with those completely clear eyes and pointed at the train on the track. "It's stuck," she said. "Mr. Moose is going to be late." I found the stuck car on the track and freed it. Set it going again. Piper said, "Thank you, Daddy," and went back to narrating Mr. Moose's journey. I went back to the dining room doorway and stood there. Hank was looking at the table. Simone was looking at me. Bev had her hands clasped in front of her. Brett had sat back down at the kitchen table, out of my line of sight again. Which said everything. I said, "I need to take Piper home." Simone said, "We can talk about this." "Not tonight," I said. Hank said, "Think about what you're walking away from, son." I thought about it, took about 4 seconds. I went to the living room. "Piper, grab Mr. Moose, we're heading out, but the train, we'll see the train next time." I got her coat, her boots, her backpack. She chattered about Mr. Moose the whole drive home, asked if she could have hot chocolate. I said yes. We made it together when we got in, the kind with the mini marshmallows, and I sat with her at our kitchen table, while she told me about the volcano and Mr. Moose and something complicated that had happened between 2 kids at school that day. I made the appropriate dad noises. Asked the right questions, laughed at the right times. None of it registered. But she didn't know that, that's the job. Bedtime. Song, which I sang badly, which she corrected me on, which she always did, which was the whole bit. Lights out. Nightlight on. Door cracked. I sat at the kitchen table after and didn't move for about 20 minutes. Then I opened my laptop. Our joint account had around $61,000. A combination of my wages from the past fire season. Wildland firefighters in Alberta can pull decent income during an active season, and Simone's steady salary. Some of that was earmarked for a fence we'd been planning to put up in the spring. Some of it was the beginning of what we'd been calling Piper's future fund. Because tuition wasn't going to be cheaper in 18 years. I transferred half, exactly $3,500, to my personal account, which I'd kept open since before we were married, force of habit from living out of camp for months at a time. Transfer logged, time-stamped. Then I opened a search. Family law lawyer, Calgary. Found a firm downtown on 8th. Reviews were solid. One partner had been practicing for over 25 years, focused on custody. Their emergency consultation line was listed. I called at 11:22 p.m. A woman answered. Not impatient. Just precise. "Tell me what you need. My wife's been having an affair for 8 months with my best friend. I found out tonight. We have a 5-year-old daughter. I want to know what I'm dealing with in terms of custody." A pause. Then, "Do you have a stable income, stable housing, no criminal record?" "Yes to all 3. Are you the primary caregiver when you're not on work rotation?" "Yes." "She works full days. I work seasonally. I'm home from October to May." Another pause. "Then come in Monday morning. Bring your employment records from the last 2 years, anything that shows your primary care involvement. School pickups, doctor's appointments, that kind of documentation." "I'll be there. Get some sleep if you can." I couldn't. But I tried. Sunday I took Piper to the TELUS Spark Science Center. She'd been asking to go for weeks. We spent 3 hours there. She pushed every button, touched every exhibit, asked me why helium made voices high, asked me why volcanoes and geysers were basically the same. I told her they were cousins. She accepted this. I texted my older brother, Callum. While Piper was in the kids zone, told him the short version. He called back in under a minute. "What do you need?" he said. "Can Piper stay at yours next Saturday? I've got things to sort out. She can stay whenever." "You want to stay too?" "Not yet." "Okay, I've got you." That was it. No lecture. No "are you sure?" Just, "I've got you." Callum has always been like that. Monday I met with a lawyer. Her name was Suzanne. Direct, prepared, no unnecessary softness. She had the documents from my weekend spread across the conference table before I sat down. "Tell me your schedule," she said. I walked her through it. Fire season ran roughly May through September, sometimes into October. During those months I was in camp, sometimes in BC, sometimes Alberta, once 2 seasons ago in Saskatchewan. Off-season, which was the bulk of the year, I was in Calgary full-time. Piper's, school pickups, doctor's, dentist, swimming lessons, playdates, all of it. Simone's schedule? 8 to 5 weekdays. Some travel for site visits, maybe 4 or 5 trips a year. Otherwise home. Suzanne nodded, writing. "Can you demonstrate that caregiving record?" "I have the calendar app. Every appointment for 2 years. My name on the contact forms at her school and the pediatrician. Her swimming instructor knows me better than she knows my wife." Suzanne smiled slightly. "That's exactly what I mean. What are we looking at? Primary residence with you. Assuming you demonstrate continued stability. Simone gets regular parenting time, weekends, shared holidays. The affair itself isn't the deciding factor in Alberta custody. courts focus on the best interest of the child. But your primary care history matters significantly. How fast can we move? I can file Wednesday, she'll be served end of week. Do it. I went to the fire hall after. My crew lead, a woman named Franny, who'd been doing this job for 20 years and had seen everything, looked at me sideways when I came in for a gear check. You look like you had a rough weekend, she said. Wife situation, I said. Oh. She said, which is the specific kind of oh, that means she understood completely and wasn't going to ask anything else. Which is exactly the colleague you want. I pulled my gear, checked my equipment, logged my hours, regular Tuesday, kept my head down. By Thursday papers were filed. By Friday Simone had been served. She called 12 times between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. I let them go to voicemail. Then I sat at the kitchen table after Piper was in bed and listened to all 12. Messages 1 through 4, shock tires, you can't do this. Messages 5 through 7, anger, accusations about moving too fast, threats to get her own lawyer. 8 and 9, calmer, pleading, we can work through this, there are people who get through this. 10, I'm coming over. 11, 2 minutes later, I won't come over. 12, please just call me. I called her back once, kept it short, you'll hear from my lawyer. Don't come to the house without telling me first. Piper doesn't need to walk into anything unexpected. You're being cruel, she said. I'm being clear, I said. There's a difference. She said, I made a mistake. I said, you made a choice. 8 months of choices. She went quiet. Then, is this really what you want? I said, what I want is my daughter to have a stable home. That's what I'm making. I hung up. Brett called once, Saturday morning. I picked up because I thought if I didn't answer once I'd spend months thinking about what I would have said. He said, I don't expect you to forgive me. I just need you to know I'm sorry. I said, I know you're sorry, that doesn't change what you did. He said, we've been friends since we were 16. I said, I know. He said, I don't know how to. I said, I don't either, Brett. And I don't have space to figure it out right now. I hung up, stared at his contact for a long time, then blocked the number. Not out of rage, out of math. The math of what that friendship cost, versus what it had been worth. Callum called that same afternoon. Your in-laws have been calling me, he said. What do they want? For you to talk to Simone. For you not to blow up the family. Hank's exact words were, don't do something permanent because of something fixable. I thought about Hank at that table, Molson in his hand, telling me to absorb it. The man who raised a daughter who thought 8 months of lies was something that could be patched over with an apology and a pot roast. Tell them I'll be in touch when I have something to say, I said. Callum said, I'm not telling them anything. I just wanted you to know what was happening. Thanks, I said. How's Piper doing there? Currently commanding my dog to perform a search and rescue mission for Mr. Moose, who she has hidden under a couch cushion. She's thriving, I said. She's thriving, he agreed. The divorce moved the way Suzanne said it would. Simone hired a lawyer of her own, a good one, which I respected, and they pushed back on a few things. House sale versus buyout. Parenting time. One motion to revisit primary residence. Suzanne submitted my care documentation. 2 years of school pickup records, teacher contacts, medical appointment histories, the fact that I'd taken 2 unpaid weeks off the previous spring when Piper had pneumonia, 3 weeks when her daycare had closed unexpectedly. The parenting time motion went nowhere. Simone's lawyer also floated Brett's involvement in Piper's life. He was her godfather, and they made a brief argument that cutting that connection might not serve Piper's interests. Suzanne buried it in about 5 pages of legal response. The court wasn't interested. The house situation was harder. We'd bought in Bridgeland 3 years ago. Before prices really climbed. I didn't want to sell. Piper was in her school, had her friends. The neighborhood had a park she'd basically claimed as personal territory. I offered a buyout. Simone's lawyer pushed back. Eventually we agreed. I buy her out at assessed value. I take the mortgage. She gets a lump sum from the joint assets plus a portion of the equity. It cleared out my savings, but it was math I could live with. I kept the house. The first winter was the hardest. Not because of Simone. That grief was clean. Something hurts less when the reason for it is unambiguous. The harder grief was Brett. 20 years. Our friendship had its own geography. Arenas in every mid-sized Alberta city, fishing trips up near Grande Prairie. A road trip we'd taken in our 20s down through Montana, just because neither of us had been. Some mornings I'd start to text him something stupid, a hockey score, a news clip. The kind of nothing you only send to someone you talk to every day, and then remember. That was the kind of wound that came back sideways, when I wasn't expecting it. But I didn't reach out. What would be the point? An apology doesn't return what was taken, and reopening that door would just mean getting hurt twice. Piper adapted faster than I did, the way kids always do. She asked about her mom consistently the first few months. Where she was, when she'd see her, if she could call. I kept the answers neutral, and the calls regular. Simone had her every other weekend and Wednesday evenings. She came for those pickups without drama, dropped Piper off on time, was civil at the doorway. We were doing the thing you do when the person you used to love becomes a co-parent instead. Functional. Managed. Piper started kindergarten in September. I dropped her off her first day. She wore a backpack that was almost as big as she was, and walked into that building like she owned it. Her teacher told me at pickup she'd declared herself the class expert on volcanoes during the first morning circle. She's exactly who I needed her to be. Work was straightforward. I went back to fire season in May, earlier than usual due to a dry spring. My crew lead Franny had been bumped to operations coordinator, and I'd been asked if I wanted to step into her crew lead role on a trial basis. More responsibility, more paperwork, better pay. Alberta wildfire wages at that level were meaningful. I said yes. The season was hard. We were deployed to BC twice, once near Kelowna and once up near Smithers. Long weeks away. But Callum covered. Piper stayed with him and his wife, Claire, and their kids when I was in camp, which she treated less like an arrangement and more like a bonus summer vacation. Claire told me at the end of the season that Piper had basically become a third child in their house, and if I needed to deploy again, they had room. I came home in October with the crew lead title confirmed, and a salary that, combined with off-season project work I'd picked up through the city of Calgary, meant I was earning more than I had in any year of our marriage. I didn't tell anyone. Just opened Piper's Resp and made the first real contribution. The second year was quieter. The divorce was finalized in March, 15 months after Hank's kitchen table. The decree was clean. Primary residence with me. Regular parenting time for Simone. No alimony, no support either direction. We'd structured the finances to avoid it. Equal contribution to Piper's Resp going forward. Suzanne sent me a short email. Congratulations. That's as clean as these things get. I sent back. Thank you for everything, she replied. Buy your daughter a nice birthday present. That's all the celebration you need. Piper turned 6 in April. I took her to the Calgary Zoo with 4 kids from her class. We spent 3 hours at the Africa section alone, because there was a giraffe that apparently had the same name as one of her stuffed animals. And this was, she explained very seriously, a significant coincidence. I stood there watching her lead, her 4-person kindergarten crew from exhibit to exhibit, with the absolute confidence of someone who has never once doubted their interesting. And I thought, there it is. That's it. Right there. Hank sent me a letter in February. Not an email, an actual letter, handwritten. He wrote that he was sorry for how he'd framed things at the table. That he understood now why I'd done what I did. That he hoped, at some point I might let him see Piper occasionally, separately from the Simone parenting time arrangement. I sat with that for a few weeks. Hank had always been decent to me. He was the one who'd told me in the first place. His instinct, when he found out, was to tell me, not to manage it quietly, not to let me live in it indefinitely. He'd made a clumsy ask at that table, but he'd also handed me the truth. I wrote him back, told him I appreciated the letter. That I wasn't ready for a regular arrangement, but if Simone's parenting time sometimes included him and Bev, I wouldn't object. That was as far as I could go. He wrote back 2 lines. That's fair. Thank you. Bev sent a card at Christmas. I sent one back. Small steps. The kind of distance that might eventually shorten but, slowly, on my terms. Brett I didn't hear from. He'd respected the block. I heard through Callum that he'd moved to Edmonton, was working in the oil patch, that Simone and he hadn't ended up together. I didn't know how to feel about that last part. Something that was almost satisfaction. Something that was almost sadness. I didn't spend much time trying to sort it out. Some feelings don't need to be labeled to be real. The 3rd spring I met someone. Her name is Rosalind. She worked as a parks planner for the city, and I kept running into her at the same community engagement meetings I'd started attending about the green space near Piper's school. 3rd meeting she said, "You're the firefighter who keeps asking very specific questions about tree density." I said, "Trees matter." She said, "They do." We got coffee that Thursday. She was sharp, easy to talk to, asked about Piper early and genuinely. Didn't flinch when I said the situation was complicated. Said her own parents had co-parented, after a difficult split, and she knew what that looked like from the kid's side. I appreciated the directness. Didn't over-explain my situation, didn't under-explain it either. We were 3 months in before she met Piper, deliberately timed for when I was certain it wasn't going to be a short thing. By the time summer came and I was heading back to fire season, Piper had started calling her Rosie. Small, good, real. Fire season that year was the longest I'd worked. We were in BC for most of August, a brutal stretch, near Princeton. I called Piper every night I could. Which wasn't every night. Which was the hardest part of the job. But she had Callum and Claire, and she had her routine, and when I came home at the end of September, she launched herself at me at the front door, and then immediately pulled me inside to show me the new volcano she'd built out of papier-mâché for a school project. The house smelled like vinegar and baking soda. I told her it was the best volcano I'd ever seen. She said, "You've seen a lot of volcanoes?" I said, "Enough to know, a good one." She thought about that, then she said, "Rosie helped me paint it." Good, I thought. Really good. In October, 2.5 years after that kitchen table in Tuscany, Suzanne forwarded me a document from Simone's lawyer. A withdrawal of the outstanding parenting modification motion. Simone had filed the previous spring during a stretch when she'd been living closer to Bridgeland and seemed to be reconsidering and seemed to be retrieving. The withdrawal was clean. No further action. Suzanne's note said, "And that's the last of us? You're fully settled." I was making dinner when I read it. Piper was at the kitchen table working on spelling homework, occasionally asking me to confirm whether a word had one L or two. Rosalind was coming over in an hour. The house was warm. Outside, first snow of the season coming down on the backyard where we'd put up a proper swing set the previous spring. Piper had supervised the installation with the intensity of a site foreman. I set my phone down on the counter. Piper looked up from her homework. "What is it?" "Nothing important," I said. She looked at me for a second, like she wasn't sure she believed that. Then she went back to her spelling. She was right not to believe it, but she was also 6.5, and the adult complications of her life would wait until she was ready for them. For now, spelling words. Dinner. Rosie coming over. The swing set in the backyard. I bought our house outright from the settlement equity, and my own savings the following January. Not a rental, not an investment, a home. 3 bedrooms. The backyard with the swing set Piper tested the same day we got the keys by going so high. She said she could see the whole neighborhood. The mortgage was done. The city kept my crew lead position permanent. The RESP had a real number in it now. I dropped Piper at school on a morning in March. 6 months before I started writing any of this down. She hugged me at the curb the way she always did. Brief and tight. Then ran toward the entrance. Stopped at the door, to wave. She always does that, one wave then inside, and I've stood at that curb every morning waiting for it because I would genuinely miss it if she stopped. She disappeared through the door. I drove to work with the radio on, coffee in the cup holder, the city still half asleep around me. No calls from numbers I'd blocked. No ghosts at the edges of the morning. Hank had wanted me to absorb it. The family wanted me to process it quietly and then eventually come to terms with it. They'd framed it as maturity, as being the bigger man, as thinking about the long picture. I thought about the long picture. That's exactly what I did. The long picture is a 7-year-old who knows what it means to have a parent who shows up every single day. A house that belongs to us now in every way it can. A job I'm good at, that matters. Somebody who knows about the tree density at the park and thinks I ask good questions. That is the long picture. You can choose to carry other people's wreckage for them, call it love, call it family, call it strength. Or you can put it down, walk out, build something that belongs to you. I put it down. I never looked back and I never will.